Hey, everybody. Welcome to Improv FAQ at length. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have lots of questions surrounding them. I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And we are live. I was trying to, like, while I was doing that last week when I...
Yep.
This is go back and actually listen to what exactly
the podcast that may or may not be about improv.
Yeah, I think I said this is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have nothing to do with improv. The fuck?
Is that you?
That is me. That's a fire alarm going off.
Do you want to go check that? I can.
I should be right back.
Yeah. Well, hey everybody. Well, James is checking to make sure the apartment him and Julia share are not on fire. If you have any fire tips, leave them in the comments below. Today we have a really interesting topic of conversation. We're going to talk about improv and how it has affected our lives, positive, maybe negative. If there's any of those, we'd like to hear your stories as well. So comment. And as always, this is a conversation at the bar, so we might start with one topic and move to another. If you have any improv questions that you're interested in hearing me and James's opinions about, please just leave comments. The overall thing I'm asking for is comments. It takes a village to run a podcast, so your comments and questions are appreciated. So what's going on, James?
Oh, yes. Have you been monologuing?
Oh, like a mother. Yes.
Okay. I have unplugged the smoke detector. Julia is making breakfast it's 1 p.m. and that's for us.
That's
our
breakfast. Yeah.
Breakfast brunch. So sorry for the interruption there. No edits. No edits.
Not the live ones, baby. Good.
Okay, so I if I am catching the last part of your spiel there correctly, just let people know that they can ask questions.
Yep. Yeah. As always, it's the conversation at the bar. So we're going to start with one topic, and then if just to keep the ball rolling, let's introduce some conversation.
Yes, and then our designated starting topic for this episode is going to be improv for life.
For life, baby.
For life.
I always script the camera like, can do it.
But really, there's some specific things in this which is going to be about like things that are good for improv that are also good for life and vice versa. And this is a question that I think Tia asked back when we were doing the daily Q&A series.
Yeah.
It's a really great question and topic about like the relationship between improv skills and good, healthy life habits.
Right.
So we're going to start talking about a few ideas under that umbrella, but it really is just like such a large topic that depending on how much we spitball on it, we might even be a recurring sort of segment that we could.
Yeah, this could be like 100-part series.
100 parts.
100 parts. I did the math, and yeah, at least. And we might discover some parts along the way. 100 plus.
Yeah, I stopped doing the math at 100 plus.
Yeah.
Okay,
James, I'm not a good student. I don't do my homework.
So I think the first one that we kind of it first comes to mind for both of us is about listening.
Absolutely.
The better you are at listening as an improviser, the better you are. That tends to affect your ability to listen off stage too, and right. The more that you try to be like really present and a good active listener off stage, the easier that is on stage, and especially to like understand what exactly it means to listen.
Yeah. rather than just hear, because I think we do a lot of that. You know, I'm staring at my phone. I'm hearing what Natalie says to me, but am I listening to her? It's a completely different situation. And not only just listening, like listening, accepting, and without judgment, and then really listening to what they're trying to say, and maybe the why behind what their ask, or their topic conversation.
Yeah, even the why too is like something you might not really expect off stage, or like you don't really think about it. It's like a lot of the time with listening, people are like just hearing what you're saying, but on stage and off stage, there's more going on because people aren't perfect communicators. You know, like
No.
not everyone can just like one-to-one exactly express what they're feeling, what they're thinking, and whatnot. So like when people are telling you one thing, there might be something else going on, and that's
Right.
true almost always on stage. That
Yeah,
because we're improvising as
I
characters.
would say almost always off stage too, because there's
Yeah.
a part of the personality there's a part of yourself you can't see. So you might have a want and not even know the actual reason why you're wanting it, but this is something that's important to you, and you're trying to communicate it to somebody, and you're not painting the whole picture because you don't have all the pieces as you would need to paint a picture. All the pieces, not a puzzle. That's me judging myself.
That's you letting us know what's going on with you.
Yeah, that whole statement said a lot more about me than what I was trying to say. That's okay. I'm okay with it. I know.
But yeah, so listening to understand, I think that's really what it comes down to. Listening to understand, and I think that's just such a wonderful skill. And the more that we do these episodes and these conversations during the pandemic, and the more that we've kind of like unpacked some of the things that people miss about improv that are missing because we can't do it on stage in a live setting, and just by virtue of unpacking some of these topics, the more that I really value improv as something to like just help change people and communities and whatnot in a positive way. Just the real ability for improv to do that just becomes more and more clear the more that we talk about it. Not that it's going to be like the savior and world peace, but like
no, but on a small scale, it does create an opportunity for people to want to listen to each other, and that's hard to produce organically. In a jam situation, two complete strangers from different backgrounds who may have never met, different religions, different social, economic political point of views, have to get on stage and have to work together.
Yeah.
And I can't think of too many opportunities we have in everyday life where we can manufacture that.
Yeah. Yes. The like, what a fun way to exercise. No, like people cringe when it's like corporate team building exercises and whatnot, but like once you see an improv jam or so many people get hooked on the idea of like, I can get up there and play, and you really are just exercising the same things that you are typically trying to be taught and workshopped in team building and leadership workshops and seminars and stuff like that. So it's such a fun way to have the opportunity to do exactly what you just said, which is to just like get up with strangers and get along.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to drop all the crap that you have gained by becoming an adult, and just really get to your pure self, your pure human being.
Yeah.
So going back to, like I said before, that's why we call it play, because kids are pure beings who play and just have this great way of communicating. Even though it may not make sense outside their bubble, it makes sense to them, and they do an amazing job to each other. Like trying to talk to a kid sometimes can be rough.
Yeah, right. Well, let me ask you this, because just on the topic of like listening and communication and whatnot, there's so much communication breakdown going on in the world and on social media and stuff. And I don't know really what your relationship is with trying to engage with people about politics and what's going on in the world on
Right.
social media. But like, do you find in those situations or other sort of like uncomfortable exchanges, like does improv help with those interactions? Like, do you find that it's helped in the even in this like terribly you know tense
Yeah.
society?
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. It's a great question. And I think my approach is I don't like to talk politics unless I honestly don't like talking politics overall, but I think it's necessary,
Mhm.
to show your views, especially if with some of the more social issues. I think that's really important to even especially when you're in a position where you can help something that's marginalized. So I think that's very important. Um, but I also think it's only effective to have that communication one on one or in person, because with stuff like Twitter and Facebook posts and everything else, again, people will hear you, but they'll interpret it their way, so they're not
Will
listening to
they?
you.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
you're giving them
there's
tech to just like pick apart and it's
yeah.
war games. It's insane. Like I
Well, yeah, it's a crazy ex girlfriend who puts reads your text with their cadence and then gets mad at you when you sent a simple text. You know.
Yeah, and I agree, and that with that philosophy that like I am willing to talk about politics, and I think that's important. I hope that most people do, especially today.
Right.
But I do have a hard time trying to have an active voice on social media or any medium that's like impersonal or indirect,
Right.
which includes here because this is a conversation between you and I, but it's also meant to be in front of an audience that doesn't have a voice to chime in
Yeah.
um, to the same degree that we do. So it's like um,
And we're
I don't know.
also trying to be. I'm sorry. And we're also trying to be all inclusive. So yeah, I don't want anybody who has a different point of view not to feel included, because I think we both agree right now we all need each other. I'm
Totally.
sorry, I totally talked over you.
No, I think that's a great add-on to the point, and I prefer to have these kinds of conversations in person if I'm really going to like unpack well,
Yeah,
what do I think? What do I think? The one of the biggest topics right now is like what is real? What is the truth of what's
yeah,
going on either side of it? Like what is the meta reality of all these different issues? And if I'm going to have a conversation about that, I would much prefer to do it in person because I think that you can come to a better understanding and
yeah,
agreement about what's true if you are in person, as opposed to just like being on the internet with like all this misinformation available to back up your point and
yeah.
all misinformed people to support your point. Gotta go again. That's my fire alarm.
All right. I thought now you may be asking yourself, James, how is a fire alarm going off when you took out the batteries? I don't know. I can't answer that. We'll have to ask. If you have questions like these for James, please feel free to leave comments. We love comments. As far as talking politics, going back to what I was saying before, I think the most effective way is to have that conversation one on one, because you can also read the room better. You can, and by that you can see if the person that you're trying to connect to wants to connect. Unlike when you do a Twitter, a Twitter tweet. So I'm going to call it that. Rather than when you a Twitter tweet, you don't know who's reading it. You don't know what mood they are in when they're reading it. You don't know whether or not they're ready to receive the information. They're on the toilet reading your tweets, and they're going to take it however they want to, and it's filtered through whatever day they've been having. I was just talking about why I think it's better to have political conversations one on one, because you can also read the room.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I got to tell you real quick, it's harder than I thought to unplug a fire alarm.
That's the first question I asked when you left. That's how I started that monologue.
Yeah, I mean, oh, there's Julia.
Julie thought it was Natalie thought it was our fire alarm.
The other people in our households
Yep.
are following this the action here, and also very concerned about where it's coming from. Yeah, Julia, I love you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we're good, Julia. It was a great exercise in monologuing. I think.
Yeah, we haven't had the opportunity before on the show.
No.
So good.
Maybe one day Natalie gets it off our fire alarm, and you can have it, and you'll have to.
Yeah. Or we should just have surprise, like we should just have some kind of randomizer that, like, if you say the secret word at some point, the other person has to disappear.
What is that short for? I think it's a Go Labs game where, like, oh, tell me more about that, or
Oh wait.
You know what I'm talking about?
I thought you were gonna say Gone in 16 seconds.
No, I was gonna say like the one where, like, oh, go on, and then the person has to do a monologue.
Yeah. I don't think that's a Go Labs game, unless it's one that I missed. But I love that. I know what game you're talking about. Of like, you can basically pimp somebody into launching into a monologue / lecture in the middle of the scene.
There's a phrase to cue it, and it's also the name of the game.
Go on.
So anybody, So if any of our listeners know the name of that improv game, feel free to leave a comment.
Yeah. Okay, but yeah, you were saying in your monologue that it's easier to read the room in person, and yeah, you're right. I think when it's just in text, it's a lot harder to obviously convey emotion. It's easier to misinterpret for the same reason, and in improv and offstage, a big part of listening is the nonverbal expressive cues that people are giving, the physicality, the body, the posture, gesture, and all that. A lot of unconscious stuff going on when you're in the same room with somebody that you can see and use to understand what's going on, that is completely absent in text. And
what's that thing that poker players look for? Like your tell?
Tells.
Like people have tells. Yeah. So people do have tells. Like if they're listening and they agree, they'll slowly nod their head.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you nod your head when you do it, like you can get someone to do it with you.
Yeah, right. Yep. Yeah.
Like that. Are their bodies open? Are they closed?
Yeah.
How comfortable are they? Are their shoulders up, back, down? Like,
yeah, yeah, and so I do think though that like even in reading people's when I'm online and I'm paying attention. I've been doing a lot of this lately, more than I should. I know it's kind of toxic, and I'm doing it more as a study than I am out of just like sort of almost like sadistic or masochistic indulgence. But like I try to browse the comment threads on political posts, and sometimes I'll see it like 10% of the time that there's somebody who is actively trying to say, let's have an actual conversation here, and try to understand each other. And it might be somebody in a post. I'm gonna not name, I guess, who people that I've looked at threads or seen comments from, but sometimes they're anonymous. But like, sometimes somebody will be like, hey, if you have a differing opinion about this topic, or like if you support Trump, or like, if you have an issue with Biden, like what is
right,
hit me up, and let's have a conversation about it. And I kind of wonder a lot. One, like, when if somebody's attempting to do that, like what does it take to get both parties to agree to it,
Right.
which is I think really linked to improv, um, and then um, and then also like what is missing in the conversation that would be easier in person as you know, we get the chance to,
Well, I
you know,
mean,
like
in that situation, you don't have any leverage. So it's really hard to get the person to agree to have a civil debate. And I think that's a society problem because you you may not win the argument, but you can feel like you're winning if you come up back with a snarky comeback or meme, you know.
yeah,
Yeah, you know, okay, because I don't want to get political. I do the same thing, but like I live in Ferndale. Ferndale has a Facebook forum that I do. There's three different Ferndale forums because one forum wasn't enough and didn't.
real quick, Bob. I hate
Yeah.
to interrupt, but I think your mic's a little quiet. Do you have a way to turn up the
Oh,
gain on it?
not like a button nut, or maybe I just need to get closer. Is that better?
Am I really loud? Am I just hearing?
No, you sound
Nope.
like how you always sound.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
I don't know. You sound a little quiet to me, but
okay.
maybe it's me.
No, I tilted it a different way because I don't like it when the red.
Oh, when the light's showing.
Yeah, because it distracts me. I'm like a cat. Uh,
Yeah.
so I was saying, like,
Ferndale
so
Forum.
there are different Ferndale forums for different, I guess I would call it sensibilities. One of them is more about, just making jokes and memes and stuff like that, but they get stuff done. I mean, it's just their preferred form of communication. The other one, they want to be totally pro Ferndale, but if you have a complaint about a business, they don't take too kindly unless it's like a legit one.
Okay.
You can't be too, I don't know, wishy-washy on it. But anyways, down the street there was like a Payless shoe store, and they all went out of business, right? So this thing's been empty for about 2 years now, and it's becoming an Arby's. So like
Sweet.
the sentence, there's an Arby's opening up down the street. I would not think it would be triggering, or would make anybody feel any type of way unless they like roast beef. But the comments on it were like, "Oh, we don't need another chain restaurant in our Ferndale." Like, you know what? If we don't, we're a capitalist society. It'll close. Why are you upset?
Yeah.
And if it keeps going, then obviously we did, and you're wrong, and you didn't know the business model. So why are we having this? Why is this a conversation?
Yeah.
And,
That's a good point too. That like, I'm well. Again, we're kind of meandering in all different directions, but like,
yeah,
it is a good point that like, well, if your neighborhood doesn't need it or doesn't like it, then it probably won't do very well. And if it does, then maybe you'd be okay with like the fact that there are a bunch of people in your neighborhood that are into Arby's.
absolutely. But like it started off just people giving their opinions, and then like you said, it got kind of personal. Like, oh well, that coming from someone who trims the ears of his dog, you masochist. And like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, and then
But
yeah, and
so
then
so
someone
then
came on and did that thing. Like, can we just have a civil conversation?
yeah, and that is, I think, the most important uh uh question. Can't we just have a civil conversation? I think that we should, be trying to make like real progress, whatever that might mean, because I think you can also say like, yeah, we can have a civil conversation and then just have people share their opinions, um and then not go the extra step of like having a conversation about them, and actually giving critical thought to like, well, is it okay to have like, is that coming from a place of something wrong or off, like, um and I think that like, what, I guess two things. One, I will say that I think that my experience as an improviser, as somebody that listens to understand and tries to
Right.
find a way to communicate um, in a way that matches the other person's perspective or perception of what's going on. I
Right.
think that has really helped me when I do choose to engage on in these various mediums that aren't in person.
Yeah.
Um, the second question is like, what does it take to get uh, both sides of it to agree to that? And like,
Yeah. Yeah.
how much of
Well,
that is in
yeah.
improv, you know?
Well, first of all, really quick, Devin Jenkins is on my watch party. He says we both sound really good, and we just want to say hello.
Thanks,
But to
Devin.
get to your question, like, so again, yeah, we have no stakes, so society has to change in a way to
Mhm.
almost uh, give an incentive for this kind of conversation. Like, if there was I don't know, like a fourth news channel where all people did was give the facts without, you know, without bashing the messenger or whatever. I don't know, depending on how you feel.
Mhm.
Um, and we all turned into that. The other three current news, mediums would start taking on that business model as well. I think the incentive now is just to get clicks. So saying wild things, not listening, not really engaging in conversation. I don't think the incentive is to have a decent conversation, because if you do, then there might be a resolve and the conversation stops.
Yeah. So what if that worked in improv? Like, and
Right.
and sometimes it does. Like uh, there's like anything from like bar prov to like just communities that kind of have more I guess like joke driven or like shock driven performance styles. Um, and but like, isn't it so interesting that like that same kind of like the concept of
Right.
clickbait um doesn't really work the same. It
Well,
has to be like
it's
more
that concept,
cooperative.
like, don't go for the joke.
Yeah.
That doesn't help the narrative.
Yeah. And like what if that was also true in social media and news? Is that like it
Wow.
doesn't, people are just like, no, it feels hacky and I don't think there's integrity to it. And like I wish they would
Mhm.
just work together to create a reality. like
Yeah.
what a different world that would be if we had
Oh my,
if we had the
that would
same
be,
bullshit detector for uh media and propaganda that we do for when somebody's just, you know, making a sweaty attempt at getting a joke on stage.
absolutely. I would have loved that. I would love to live in that reality. Um, and I think overall we do. But those who do aren't the ones engaging in it, so that's why it doesn't change.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think that people who are, do you think there's a good amount of people, a chunk of the pie, let's say, that are just not engaging because they feel that same way that we just described about like it's not in
Right.
person. What are we going to gain here?
Some person, or they're not going to discuss real things, or whatever discussed here is not going to matter. So why engage in it?
Yep.
It's like watching bad stand up. Like, it's not gonna be interesting and thought provoking. They're just gonna be jokey as hell. Why go pay $10 to sit down and listen? You know.
Yeah. um, one of my pet peeves. I was just remembering one of my pet peeves when I was younger, like maybe throughout like high school. Uh, what's your people, whatever, for whatever reason, the question of like what are your pet peeves was coming up, and so I felt the need to like pick one, like a favorite color, and just stick with it. And for years I used to say that my biggest pet peeve was political bumper stickers. um and there's some, I guess I can't quite phrase what it is, but there's something in that of like, here's just like a statement that you have to look at, that I don't know. There it is something of like whatever you believe, you have the right to wear it as a badge of pride.
Right.
But But on the other hand, just kind of like dropping something with no intention of like engagement is also just really annoying to me, and is disconnected.
Yeah. I think we lost a lot of like in our communication, in our storytelling, nuance.
Mhm.
And I think that comes from ego. I think that comes from people who again, going back to listening, who don't want to listen. They just want to shove information down your throat because they have a belief, and you're wrong if you don't. Um,
Yeah.
and I think about back in the day when you weren't allowed to say I don't know, different beliefs because in different parts of the world, there wasn't freedom of speech. There might have been a monarchy or whatever. So you would have to do storytelling in a way where you can get your thought through, but through the story, it was like thinly veiled. What your intent was. Like something,
Sure.
or like even recently, something as simple as like Dr. Seuss, like explained to children basic political views without talking politics.
Yeah, like the butter battles, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I ironically, this is something that I picked up on uh social media. Um, but that somebody said that like people have political conversations too much like or like just in society in general we're sort of trained to talk like lawyers instead of engineers, where we have an assigned point of view or thing to defend or attack, and we're just playing, arguing for sport to win our side. And whereas like as an engineer you would be like trying to figure out the best solution, and advocate for what you think is the solution, but also try to find ways to poke holes in it to be sure, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Testing yourselves, testing, like using the scientific method to test yourself out, test your
Yeah,
theory.
and I think that's something in improv as well, is that like if you go into a scene in the beginning of a scene, you're like, I think this is what's going on, or this is what I intend to have happen,
Right.
to offer. You have to be able to like you can go into it being like, oh, this is what I'm driving at, this is my idea for a scene, this is who I think I am, and this is what I'm reading about what's going on. You can do all that, but at the same time you have to be like, is that what my scene partner thinks is going on? You have to be open to
Right.
the idea that like they I think they might think something else is going on.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you're doing it with the best intentions. Going back to what you're talking before, I think part of being an improviser does help you to listen to other people who have conflicting views or approaches, and actually listening to what they're saying without judging them.
Mm.
You can be pro Arby's, and if I'm anti Arby's, I can live with that because I know you're not a bad person. You just like Arby's. That's bad deli, but it doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah, or I guess it is kind of like on the still related to Arby's, is like I'm a vegetarian. Um
Oh yeah.
yeah, but like and I think I've gotten more people to think. It's not my intention to really to get people to think about being a vegetarian, but I think I've gotten more people to think about it by just uh being open to talking about it if asked, and
Yeah.
also not being afraid to be vocal if in like if we're out to eat or we're all like I will say, of course, I'm a vegetarian, so if there's something we can do with that, great. But I don't necessarily like uh need to put the hammer down because it creates friction, right?
Right. Right.
If you are always on like the offensive about something, um and I think that like getting when people ask me about it, I think that that's more effective than when I tell people about it, I guess is
Because
what.
they're open to hear.
Yeah.
They came. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's crazy, man. It's just they're like but at the same time, like in improv, you do have to like be making active choices and expressing what you are bringing to the table, and in order to like really get anything done. So it's like um there is still part of it where it's like you can't just sit still, but you just can't, there's a balance between like shoving your idea down someone's throat, and having things happen your way versus um standing that being one extreme, and then the other extreme being like, well, we're both just going to stand still until the other person does something, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yes. Julie has a really cool comment.
Yeah, Julia says there are things people believe in that do affect and harm other people.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That, and I guess when it comes to activism on immediate threats or harmful ideology, is a different story than the general scope. But I don't think that's most things, like, and I think those are like extremes where the idea
Yeah.
of good improv isn't going to be the saving grace
Yeah.
of the answer.
Well, plus that's a different conversation. Like trying to have a conversation, a debate with someone, hoping to broaden and change their point of view, rather than stopping them from doing harm. Two different conversations. Like,
Yeah.
and that's when I do think Twitter is effective. Like if there's a truth that you have to spread to the masses, absolutely. Blank is hurting blank. Let's stop doing blank.
Yeah.
Jon Stewart just did a really great one where he did one great one last year when he was helping the first responders 9/11 and how like their benefits were being stopped. Like that's true. That like there's no debating. I can't try to get you to go either way. Like or maybe I take that back. It was his way of changing the mind of the power by getting the masses behind him. Like it wasn't like he wasn't up for debate. This is just his truth, though. Like this is
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so, and then I think the issue that happens with social media though is
yeah
that uh and back to Julia's point too, is that like um the problem is becoming that we can't agree on what's true, right? So that if there are things that people believe in that do affect and harm other people,
yeah
that's true. There are things we what we need is to agree on what they are.
yeah
So that like somebody isn't advocating for something that is not true, on the pretense that it is a real thing that is creating harm and affecting other people. Um, and that if there is something that is truly affecting and harming other people, that you can actually get people to believe that, um, without it being automatically dismissed or um, pushed back against, or written off because of who it's coming from or how it's presented, or
yeah
because we're all in this world of skepticism because of whatever side of we're on of things. So I guess in my um not answer, but like I think what we're talking about in terms of
yeah
that comment from Julia is that like if we do a better job of listening to understand and finding ways to connect with each other, then we'll be less likely to uh, we'll be more likely to hear what like the reality of
yeah
things, and
yeah
less susceptible to push the
right.
unreality of things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And then also like going back to reading the room, um, like if someone has a hurtful belief, is this coming from anger, ignorance, or choosing to be ignorant? Because if you're choosing to be ignorant or you're angry and you pick a philosophy that is harmful to serve whatever need that you have that's born out of hate, then it's going to be really difficult to have a civil conversation with that person, I think.
Yeah.
If it's just ignorance, if they were, misled, I think that's a little bit easier. I've heard of cases of that, like, people who just got sucked up into something they didn't realize had the potential or resulted in the harm of other people. And all they needed is the truth, and to stop that behavior and change their behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to Sue's question or
Okay.
comment/question. Sue says it seems that leaving the ego behind once you step on stage might facilitate more relatable scene work. What are our thoughts?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that that's one of the biggest hurdles or challenges in improv and as people is to uh, set ego aside and work together. Like,
Yeah.
in
I
short,
mean, you should be pretty much open for anything. And I mean, that's the whole like big philosophy, right? Yes, and like if you can't say yes to everything if you are filtering it through your own perspective.
mhm.
So you have to drop that. And then and also I think that's why character work is so important, because then it's easier for you to drop it the farther away from your own character you play, or your own self you play. Um,
Yeah,
and it gives you a device to be accepting to all information, because there's no stakes for you personally. It's this character. I mean, and hopefully you're using that for good.
yeah. Follow up comment from Sue. Uh, she says, "I mean, so many folks get into performing arts because of their big egos."
Of
You
course.
know that I think we had an episode with Tiffany Baxi
Yeah.
about ego, and it's a really good conversation. And uh, one of the things that I can't remember how it came up, but it was like, are there more egos? Is that something you run into a lot? And I think that one of the things, let's try to figure out what is the difference between improv and some other performing arts stuff, because I think that there's ego in all of it, but I think that like improv tends to have this thing that where um it's about stripping away the ego in order to do it successfully. And I have not gone down the path of
Yeah.
you know like professional path
Yeah.
or education in other performing arts disciplines, but I
Yeah.
wonder if that same thing is embedded as much as it is in improv.
Well, I think this is one of the few of these arts that you do by committee. So there must be a want to be on stage, which takes a little bit of you want that recognition, you want applause, you want laughs, but you also want to do it in a group. So that's completely different than like a stand up, or like any other kind of, not any other, but most performers. So I think
Yeah,
there's something to it. Like there is a want to get recognized, but be cool by being recognized as part of an ensemble rather than it's me. Um, I think there's a growing
yeah.
period
It's
where
almost like
people do
healthy ego.
want that spotlight all to themselves as soon as they're comfortable, and then they have to strip that back. I'm sorry, what were you
No, no,
saying?
no. I was just chiming in to sort of add that it's like having a healthy ego, like
Yeah,
there, because it's not something that we say like we want to kill the ego, push it down or whatever, but it's not something you really get rid of. It's something that can exist in a healthy way or a destructive or toxic or selfish way. And so I think it's just about reframing what it is that your ego wants and feels rewarded by. Um,
yeah.
and yeah, I think
And then
connecting.
when you get really good, you get to the point where, we always say this, like the best improviser is the one making the other ones look well. Like that should be your goal. And I think it's it's a learning process to get to that point. So
Yeah,
at the beginning, I think there's a lot of students who may not be ready, or may be interested in being on stage, but not ready to be an improviser, like in the true sense of the word. And maybe they'd be better served as stand up, or something that were the spotlights solely on them, because of the way to perform. And that's why we call it play. And honestly, I don't want to speak for you, but it's been my experience that as a community, we have a way of almost filtering out people whose egos are too big, who don't want to share. You know,
Right.
it's like having the rich kid on the block who does have all the cool equipment, but when you go to play at their house, they change the rules of the game to make them
Mhm.
win, and you're like, I don't feel good about this. This doesn't feel like a fun game. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go back down to so and so's house anymore.
Right.
So you stop.
Yeah. And I wonder what that is and like what the threshold is for it on like what sort of scale. I suppose we should say alongside this, improv communities are not perfect. We can see
Oh
that
no.
throughout the last 10 years of anything from the Me Too movements to Black Lives Matter, that like this stuff is the most um toxic components of what's going on in the rest of the world are also present in improv communities on a business and organizational level, and they're not invulnerable.
Yeah.
But I think what you're describing is consistent in improv, that like we tend to the bulk of the community and performers um, uh, be if you're at again, I always think of the jam as like if there's somebody who's being like
Yeah.
uh, an asshole, that it's like you get feedback from the community that's like, that's
Right.
not what we're into. You know what I mean?
And I feel sorry for those guys, those people, those folks, because sometimes they don't. I think most of the time they don't know they're being the asshole. Like they don't know. They think they think their job is to be what they're doing or funny or whatever. They don't get it. I feel bad, but then again, it's going back to, are they ignorant or are they choosing to be ignorant? If they're just ignorant, I'll work with that person. You know, like, hey, stop playing high status all the time. Let's get into it. Like, listen, what did that person say? Like, I think those are coachable moments, and I don't think we should not invest in those people. But then there's people who refuse, like the one you give the same no to 1,000 times, and then they criticize you. Then I don't have time for you. You don't want to be an improviser or part of a community. There's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
That's interesting too. When people are like, won't take notes or,
yeah, because they're funny
yeah.
at work, or awesome. Put up a stage.
Yeah. I'm curious, Sue, if that you said that leaving ego behind facilitates more relatable scene work. And I'm curious if you use that word relatable specifically, and if you could elaborate on it, if you're able to comment, um, because I think it's an interesting notion that scene work becomes more relatable if the two people aren't, even if it's a good scene, if the two people are kind of like uh not being vulnerable, or I don't know what it is. Like I'm trying to imagine, like, can you do a good scene that um is less relatable because ego is still present? Because I think you can still do good scene work with ego being
Right.
present, at
I
least
mean,
for the audience to enjoy. You know?
I think it also can be relatable because you deal with people with egos all day, so it can be a reflection of the relationship that an audience member might have with someone else in their life. So that's relatable.
Yeah, yeah. But like if the players are playing without ego, and it's
Right.
like it's more malleable and vulnerable, and
Oh, okay.
I I I I
Yeah,
think Sue's
that
saying
sounds
that like when the players don't have ego, that the scene work is becomes more relatable. But I can, like I said, I can also imagine that if two players who are playing from a place of ego,
yeah.
might do a good fun scene to watch, but even if on the inside it feels like a fucking struggle for at least one of the people involved. But so I'm just kind of curious. Um,
I think overall that's true, but I know there's people who, because of our styles and because we have a relationship, and it's done with love, we do play with we both play with ego, and that's part of the game of the scene. So it's
mhm.
part of the way we like, me and Eric Highlander, like when we play together, we're always trying to one up each other, and it's like a game we've been playing since we were in a launch group together. I mean, not every single scene, but we can tell when it's like, oh, this one's for me and E. Like it just, and it's always a good time, and I think people enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe that's a false ego, because it's not like I'm not trying, like I'm not denying him if he gets me, like, oh yeah, you got me. So it's, I don't know, it's, so I think I thank you everybody for watching that debate by myself. I guess it feels different to me when I'm doing it. Like it's a different switch.
Well,
like you've played with Eric, you know, when he does that thing with his eyes and he's like, and you're like, oh, here we go.
Yeah,
which I love, and I fucking love playing with him. He's so much fun to play with, because he takes as good as he gives when it comes to the gameplay.
Totally, yeah. And I again, I think it's kind of like, you know, either you might be able to like play, you're like dueling, because if you're comfortable enough with each other and you know that it's like buddies razzing each other. So it's like, if you and Eric get into that place, like, are you talking about moments where that happens and you get annoyed by it, or moments?
Never annoyed, because I know it's coming from a good place.
Yeah. I think Sue just called it a match. I think she's referring to it's like a it's like a sparring match of ego, in a sense, if you get into that, and that can be entertaining. It can also be risky, which actually brings us back to Sue's follow-up comment to say, she thinks audiences want to see vulnerability in parts of themselves somewhere in the scene. If there isn't an anchor, you run the risk of losing them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because a vulnerable character, a vulnerable performer has so much more depth. You know, you're not playing an archetype. You're really playing something that's unique. And again, improv, part of the entertainment is the content. The other part is the how we put it together, the putting the show together itself. So we can show that we're giving it our all by dropping the ego, that I think the audience, whether they know it or not, appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the relatability, I think now I see what Sue was saying specifically about ego being left behind and the scenes becoming more relatable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the like vulnerability, when you see people being affected by each other or influenced by each other, acting as reacting, I think that makes for a good 2-dimensional or good 3-dimensional scene.
We did talk about this a lot with Garrett. So if anybody hasn't watched the Garrett episode, that we did go into this.
Yeah.
And by the way, thank you for all the comments, Sue. This is really helpful.
Yeah, totally. And for everyone, we got a couple on deck actually.
Okay.
So, but seeing people affected by each other, that is good scene work. And I think that you know, this idea of switching over to Devin's comment, which is I think you can pull off a good scene with ego present. I mean, there are talented people that can carry a scene, but I think it would wear an audience out over the course of a set, seeing one person force their ideas in every scene. Yeah, because obviously, like there are improvisers. You know, house teams get cast. Not every team is self-elected to play together, so it's like there are. I'm sure that there are plenty of successful teams and improvisers that have good scenes, and then really don't like each other, or like are secretly like competing with each other in a negative way. And but I think what's in those, as Devin and Sue point out, is that risk of like fatiguing the audience, or having it be sniffed out, or it's a very thin line where it can tilt to like, okay, now it's more about fighting with each other than it is about creating this scene for the audience.
Yeah, because you do put out a vibe, like you do put out an energy. Your stage presence does affect the audience, and when you're playing with that kind of ego, like it kind of taints that. So yeah, even an uneducated audience or untrained to improv audience. I don't know what you would want to call that.
Uninitiated.
Uninitiated audience. I like that. We'll pick up on it because it's the vibe of the room. And as human, as animals, as we're trained to, always be checking out our environment and letting it affect us in some way. Just,
Yep.
using our lizard brains.
You say lizard brains?
Yeah, you never heard that?
No.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I'll take it. I'm going to use it now. Using our lizard brains. We had
before you evolved. I think that's from Dexter, to be true.
Oh, okay. Okay. Natalie says, to me, dropping or moderating the ego allows for more vulnerable, compassionate, and flexible interactions with others and the external world created on stage. You can play a character with ego that drives desires and behaviors, but I think that's different from an improviser playing from ego. Yeah. The difference between a player having ego and a character having ego is major.
Completely different. Yes.
And then just Natalie echoing the absence of ego or surrendering ego for the players, allowing for more vulnerable, compassionate, flexible interactions. And I think flexible to me is actually the most might be the most important part in there.
Yeah, because a character having an ego is okay because that's the character, but usually when the actor has an ego, that affects the narrative or the character arc, because you're always protecting yourself, making sure that you come up on top. When sometimes it's more interesting watching, the strong character lose, or if you think about the hero's journey, gain your powers, lose against a smaller villain, and then learn, and then learn something about yourself, and then win.
Yeah, I'll bet you. I wonder if we could. It might take a little long. We're coming to the end of our time here.
Right.
But it's probably a tricky balance between like playing a character that has ego from a place that isn't ego driven. You know what I mean? Like it's just a tricky dichotomy. Maybe a nice closing sentiment would be from TJ and Dave's book, Improvising at the Speed of Life, where they define listening, because it is such a nebulous concept to kind of teach somebody. You got to listen. Like, well, what do I do? Like, what does it mean to listen? How do I put that into action? And the way that they kind of describe listening in more layers is that like it is a willingness to learn, and a willingness to change. That like and change being like being affected and acting differently because of what you heard and understood. So I like those kind of like 3 steps of listening is a willingness to learn and also a willingness to change.
I love that. Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Okay. Well,
wow. That we went all, not all over the place, but not the conversation I thought we were going to have on a Sunday morning. I love it though. That was really fun.
No, I thought it was a great convo. And I think again, like improv, we might do a sort of like recurring series, like we have our show and tell series, and we've done the Q&A series and whatnot. So like maybe this idea of improv for life and vice versa might be recurring, because we had a list of transferable improv and life skills and behaviors and philosophies, and we really only covered listening, and or at least like that was our like root topic. So we might come back to some others. Anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks for the additional comments and questions. They make the conversation so much more rich with other perspectives and make us think in additional ways. Okay, so if you're watching this, you are either watching it on YouTube or Facebook, and you should know that our most current And complete content is on the YouTube channel, where you can find things like the lecture series and also this Improv FAQ at Length series. We are also a podcast, so you can check out these live episodes and all of our pre-recorded episodes on Improv FAQ at Length, wherever podcasts are found. Thanks so much, everyone. This has been a really great conversation. We'll catch you next time on Improv FAQ at Length.
Bye.